What's up everybody, this is Danny, and today I'm going to be doing the camera comparison between the Huawei P20 Pro and the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus. So what I'm going to do is just test out the front-facing camera real quick and give you an idea what the stabilization in the video looks like. And then I'm going to swap in between the audio sources, so let me know which video and audio looks best. So I think this camera comparison is very interesting because the P20 Pro is the first phone to have a triple camera system and a 40 megapixel sensor, which is really huge. And then the Galaxy S9 Plus has a dual aperture camera where it can switch in between f1.5 and f2.4. So they both have something new in the smartphone game. So I want to see which camera actually comes out on top. So I'm going to go out and test it today. We're going to test all kinds of different lighting conditions and let's see which one comes out on top.
Let me start off by saying that I shot all of these pictures on both cameras on full auto because I feel like this represents most users best when it comes to the average consumer. But both of these phones have full manual modes, so you can dial in that perfect shot if you have the time to adjust before hitting that shutter. And also the P20 Pro, I left the AI mode on where it automatically detects scenes and tweaks levels for you to get the best outcome. And if you don't want this mode, you can turn it off in the settings and it gives you a flatter image. But for the full sake of all auto on both of these phones, I left it on. I wanted it to be fair. In daytime shots, I felt like both of these are fantastic. They're full of dynamic range, lots of detail and color, but here are the major differences that I noticed. After looking at hundreds of images, I noticed that the P20 Pro usually lands on the colder side of white balance, while the S9 Plus tends to land on the warmer side, so it's a preference thing. It all depends on what you like. And also you'll notice that both of these phones tend to over-sharpen images, but the P20 Pro's processing is heavier than the S9 Plus's, and you can see it more when you punch in. But to most people in a blind test, it will probably look like the P20 Pro's images are much sharper, but I think the Galaxy S9 Plus's image looks more natural. I also noticed that most of the P20 Pro's images are overexposed by a stop or so. I wish there was a way to correct this, because if you drop the exposure on the camera to, let's say, -0.7, everything looks so much better. The colors are nice on both, but I feel like the S9 Plus's image is more balanced in some shots. For instance, the blue sky AI mode oversaturates the colors like crazy, but the P20 Pro's images show higher dynamic range, less clipping of highlights, and usually you get a more contrasted image. I feel like they both struggle at the reds and oranges, so let me know which one that you think looks better. The Galaxy S9's second camera gives you a 2x zoom, while the P20 Pro's has a 3x zoom, so here's what they look like side by side, but the 5x hybrid zoom on the P20 is incredible. It's actually got plenty of detail. I was really impressed. This was shot handheld, and if you aren't into lossless zoom, you won't care, and that's okay, but having 5x hybrid zoom as an option to me is a win. The big deal about the P20 Pro is that you have a 40 megapixel sensor as one of the 3 lenses on the back, and you can actually take 40 megapixel images, and they are full of detail. You do lose the zoom features and some of the AI features when you switch to this mode. Even though both of these phones can shoot raw images, the P20 Pro takes a 40 megapixel raw image, so if you're a photographer, you might lean towards this, but the P20 Pro is defaulted to the 10 megapixel mode since the camera is optimized at that lower resolution. They both shoot 4K video, but I feel like the Galaxy S9 Plus video is much better. The colors are more accurate, it's smoother and sharper, so if you take a lot of video, then I would definitely go for the S9 Plus. And the stabilization on walking video on 4K is so much better on the Galaxy S9 Plus since it actually supports stabilization at 4K resolution. It's almost hard to believe that a modern phone like the P20 Pro doesn't have this support, but if you're willing to shoot in 1080p, the Huawei P20 Pro has some legendary video stabilization, and the video actually looks better in 1080p, which is a mystery to me. When it comes to slow motion, both of these phones have a crazy 960 frames per second slow motion capture, and even though it's 720p and it's not going to be the highest quality, it's really fun to play with them. But if I had to pick in terms of quality, I feel like the S9 Plus is a little bit smoother and more detailed, so let me know what you guys think. The S9 Plus has a 8 megapixel front-facing camera, while the P20 Pro has a crazy 24 megapixel front-facing camera, and both of them can do portrait mode. They are very similar, but the P20 Pro looks slightly better on some shots, but I feel like the skin tones are nicer on the S9 Plus. When it comes to the rear camera portrait mode, they're also very similar, nice background separation, but once again, I feel like the skin tones look more natural on the S9 Plus, but the P20 Pro's images are much sharper, so if I had to call it, the P20 Pro does a slightly better job. The S9 Plus has a feature where you can control the background blur after the fact and also takes both wide angle and portrait shot at the same time, so you get to choose which one that you use, and that's really nice. And the P20 Pro also has a mode called open aperture outside of the portrait mode where you can adjust the background blur as well, giving you some really great depth of field. When the sun starts setting, I feel like that this is a weird time for mobile cameras where it's not sure how much light to let in, but in this scenario, I feel like the S9 Plus was doing a better job with the exposure and detail. But once again, that 2x versus 3x zoom here, you can see what that looks like. And of course, that crazy 5x hybrid zoom, of course, the P20 Pro does a really good job with this. I still can't believe this works handheld, but when it starts getting darker, this is where the P20 Pro really starts to dominate. If you look at the exposure, I feel like the dynamic range and total balance of the nighttime shots really shine on the P20 Pro. Lots of detail and sharpness while minimizing overexposure with excellent noise reduction. But be aware, if you shoot in the 40 megapixel mode, you will get a noisier shot. So all these were shot in the 10 megapixel mode. The best way I can describe the P20 Pro shots are like HDR Plus for nighttime. They remind me very heavily of the Pixel 2's processing, so let me know if you want to see that camera comparison in the future. You can see how much better the P20 Pro handles the neon signs and bright lights, and you can see how much better the dynamic range here is on the P20 Pro shot. Look at the windows on this building. You can see absolutely everything inside the window on the P20 Pro, where the S9 Plus is just totally blown out. You can use manual mode to get better exposed pictures on the S9 Plus, but on auto mode, the P20 Pro crushes it despite the f1.5 aperture on the S9 Plus. But that's not it. Huawei has another trick up his sleeve, and that's the night mode. Basically, this is a long exposure shot that you can do handheld, and it takes multiple shots at different exposures and stitches them together with AI. And while the results aren't perfect every time, when it hits, it's absolutely incredible, basically turning darker situations into almost daytime. And while this is not color accurate, it can really be amazing. Overall, I'm really impressed with the low light on the P20 Plus, and I think this is where it's a clear win for Huawei here. Besides the low light though, I do think that the S9 Plus has the best overall package. It has the more natural and more balanced pictures, the 4K video is better, and all of the other features like portrait mode and front-facing camera is really a wash since they both can be pretty terrible at times. I just feel like the S9 Plus is better for the average consumer. That's not to say that you should dismiss the P20 Pro, because for a person who is really into photography or maybe a professional photographer, you might want to get a P20 Pro instead because of that awesome 40 megapixel raw imaging, the incredible monochrome mode, and the stellar low light performance and the ability to get extra zoom. So let me know which one that you like better in the comment section below. Subscribe for more camera comparisons like this one. Smash that like button for these two dope cameras, and I will see you guys in the next one.